This week on Quality Digest Live, we welcome organizational psychologist Kelly Graves into the studio to chat about his new book, The Management and Employee Development Review. That and more when we come back.
This episode of Quality Digest Live is brought to you by Mitutoyo America. Whatever your metrology challenges, Mitutoyo supports you from start to finish.
Well, welcome back one and all to Quality Digest Live for June 16th, 2017. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Mike Richman, publisher of Quality Digest. As you can see, my regular co-host, QD Editor-in-Chief Dirk Ducharme, is out. He's on vacation this week, and there is his chair right there, yes. We'll have Dirk back next week. Actually, I was out of the office for most of this week as well, attending the HxGN Live user conference at the Venetian Hotel in Las Vegas. And this event, in which I was joined by more than 3,000 of my closest friends and colleagues, is really a pretty big deal. HxGN, as many of you may well know, is made up of several different information technology brands. HxGN divisions do things like building information management, surveying, geospatial positioning, and a lot more. Of course, is of particular interest to those of us in the quality space, of course, is HxGN Manufacturing Intelligence, which offers solutions for industry, such as on the hardware side, Romer articulated arms and Leica scanners and trackers, and software solutions like Spatial Analyzer, PCDMIS, QDOS, and their latest acquisition, MSC. Now, HxGN's endgame is all about stitching together a digital thread of data that can be acquired, analyzed, and routed back into automated equipment in an endless feedback loop. And this is the smart factory, and it's truly the factory of the future as HxGN envisions it. I had the opportunity during the show to sit down with several HxGN Manufacturing Intelligence executives, including CEO Norbert Hanke, and an extended video interview with Vice President of Marketing, Stephen Graham. So stay tuned for those stories in upcoming issues of the Quality Digest newsletter, and we'll show you some clips from my video interview, again with Stephen Graham, on this show later in the month. Stay tuned for that. It's going to be some interesting stuff that came out of that conference, so I want to make sure that you all tune in and check that out coming up. All right, also in the news this week is an interesting report from Gartner. Gartner is a leading research and advisory organization. The group recently released rankings of their top 25 supply chain leaders. We linked out to their press release on this topic in Monday's issue of the Quality Digest newsletter. The rankings were calculated through a combination of financial performance, social responsibility measures, and peer as well as internal Gartner assessments of each company's demand-driven value network. Now, also known as DDVN, demand-driven value network. This is a measure of how well the organization controls risks and drives value across its supply chain. The top-ranked organization in this year's survey was Unilever, and the same company took the #1 spot in 2016. Rounding out the top 5 were McDonald's, Inditex, Cisco Systems, and H&M. Gartner also honored 3 companies in their Masters category: Amazon, Apple, and Procter & Gamble. Organizations that have reached master status have achieved, as Gartner calls it, sustained leadership over the last 10 years. Now, there are a few general trends identified by Gartner as pertinent to supply chain management. The first of these is broad and rather political in nature. With the emergence of protectionism here in the United States and parts of Europe, companies are taking proactive steps to make contingency plans in case of changes to trade policy. It makes good sense when you think about supply chains, which are now so complex that, issues of protectionism that we're seeing certainly here in the US and in Europe are going to affect supply chain practices pretty severely. There are also 3 specific best practices that Gartner can recommend as being common attributes among strong supply chain performers. The first of these is digitization of the supply chain. That means the use of IoT sensors, information of things sensors, cloud computing, and advanced analytics. The next one is adaptive organizations and capabilities. In other words, modular supply chain systems that can thrive in almost any circumstance where you have natural disasters or, again, maybe some tariffs or things that may affect the ability to trade freely. You need to be adaptive to deal with that. And finally, it's developing and fostering healthy ecosystems. This comes down to relationship building, ethical sourcing, and understanding the well-being of all stakeholders. And I think that last one represents a pretty good set of ground rules for pretty much any company anywhere doing anything, to be ethical and to consider your stakeholders in your broader mission, especially for companies that have rather large supply chains. So good report there from Gartner. Again, you can check it out in the story right below there on this video player screen. All the stories we're going to be covering on today's show are available right down there as always. Okay, well, let's think about risk-based thinking. It continues to be a top-of-the-mind concern for industry, and it goes well beyond quality management systems. In fact, it can be argued that the appropriate management of risk goes to the heart of a business operating system, and that, of course, requires appropriate planning. Clause 6.0 of ISO 9001:2015 covers this topic, and the specific subclauses detail actions to address risk and opportunities, quality objectives and the planning to achieve them, and planning of changes. Really important stuff. Chad Kymal, Chief Technology Officer of Omnex, wrote a great, insightful article around these themes titled Risk-Based Thinking in Planning Using the Business Operating System Approach. It's currently running on the Quality Digest website. Chad and QD Editor-in-Chief Director Sharma are going to be presenting a webinar on this very topic on Tuesday, June 20th. So to give us a bit more perspective on this and a sneak peek at next week's webinar, I'm pleased to welcome Chad Kymal to the show via Skype. Chad, welcome back to Quality Digest Live.
Hey, Mike. How are you?
Good. How are you today?
Excellent.
Thank you for joining us here from Texas. I believe you're in Texas today.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, great. Well, perhaps you can start by walking us through the progression from, you mentioned this in your article, the progression from Ford's quality operating system, which you worked on in the 1990s, to the Omnex business operating system of today.
You know, Mike, you know, what's real interesting is how, you know, what foresight we had in the 1990s when we put this model together. And you can see this model as figure 1 in my paper with so what we didn't have from this model is we had mission, vision, policies, drive goals and objectives, and we had customer expectations driving goals and objectives. For the longest time, you know, we were talking about customer-focused objectives and customer-focused KPIs. And very interesting, when we did, you know, we looked at the customers, we said everybody external to the organization. So we took top management, we took corporate, we also took, you know, the government regulatory agencies. What we did not take are things like suppliers. We didn't take, you know, the employees of the organization. So with interested party expectations, these are the expectations, these are the categories that we have added. The second thing we've added also, of course, you know, we did look at critical success factors. You might say, well, critical success factors are sort of like context, but context is its own being, and it's something that's come in actually into strategy in the last 10 years. If you look at, you know, papers written by Harvard Business Review and so on. So context is new, expansion beyond customers and government is new. And then, of course, when we set goals and objectives, you set KPIs based on those goals and objectives, and you balanced it out and supported meeting these KPIs through key processes. I mean, really, imagining in the 1990s, we were talking about process focus and process measures. So that's why it's been easy implementing standards like ISO 9001:2000 when it first came out in 2000. Of course, the other big addition in, you know, ISO 9001:2015 and things like IATF 16949 2016 and AS 9100 is the idea of, you know, risks and opportunity analysis in the risk-based analysis.
Well,
risk-based thinking.
Let me.
So that's also new.
Well,
Go ahead.
Let me ask you about that, because that kind of actually feeds into where I wanted to go. I wanted to ask you, when you consider risk and planning change, well, do those kind of work when you get beyond quality as a silo and begin to consider maybe the broader needs of the business?
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, when Omnex implemented these, and also from the Ford QoS, it was not really quality oriented. It was business oriented. In fact, we had discussions with Ford trying to even call it a business operating system back then. So, especially today, with the idea of quality being meeting the needs and expectations of interested parties, and being about customer satisfaction, quality cannot be about product conformance. So quality now is a very broad term. And then with the idea of the high level structure, so we have the ISO 9001 2015, we have the ISO 14001 2015, we have the soon to be ISO 45000 with health and safety, all high level structure based, including ISO 27000 and IT. So suddenly the context, interested party expectations, and the goals and objectives are broad. They're organizational based, and the KPI is about the entire organization. And like a lead-in story about social responsibility and sustainability, we believe that should also be incorporated. And I'll just say one more thing. With IATF 16949 having corporate responsibility in there, this is a perfect opportunity to really put a business operating system in that's really about the business.
So how do these standards, specifically ISO 9001 2015, how do they address the need to plan, to set goals, to achieve goals? That's a really important one, to achieve the goals you set, and also to manage risk at the same time.
In fact, we used to say the BOS is all about making it happen. So, it's not a quality responsibility, it's really a business responsibility. So really, what we would do, and what we do is we make it a cross-functional top management responsibility, and we have champions who own the KPIs. And it's actually cross-functional. Those are results, like parts per million rejects, delivery on time, cost, customer satisfaction. These are all results of the organization, and you achieve those by identifying key processes and the process measures. But Mike, I don't know if I answered your question. But the bottom line is about achieving things, and top management will be really, really happy that the risk-based thinking is to help achieve the objectives top management sets.
Now, I think you did address my question, but there's a follow-up actually that I think we'll get into a little bit deeper, because in the article you mentioned a very specific 7-step process to implement the business operating system. So can you maybe run through those steps quickly for us and give us some perspective about the importance of each step?
This business operating system, its version originally at QoS, was a very, very important process. We trained all the Fortune 500 companies back in the 1990s, were automotive related. When I say automotive related, it's steel, it's plastics, the automotive industry hits everybody. We also did the entire service supply side of Ford. So there was a service QoS we trained. And it's a 7-step process, and you need to step through this every year. And you have to step through this, as you set your budget and as you come up with your projects for improvement. All right, let me go through this fast. First is, of course, identifying the context and the interested parties. Step number 1. Take a look at what has changed in the business, what's really important to the business. Step 2, align policy, mission, vision, values with the context. Because, as we go into companies, we talk about alignment chart, which I'll mention later. People are misaligned. The quality policy, the values, the mission, vision, all have to be aligned with the context of the organization. Step 3 is very key. How do you identify interested party expectations? We actually identify it, we list it group it, and rate it. And the rating, by the way, is based on the interested party's impact to the business. So this is why I think, because we have implemented hundreds of these operating systems, in the end of the day, in terms of the worker expectations and the supplier expectations, we have to look and see what is the impact to the business, because in the end of the day, we have only time to really focus on those expectations that immediately impacts our business in terms of dollar or loss of sales. Step 4, taking these needs and expectations, we group them into categories, and we have something usually about something like 12 categories. Things like delivery, product quality, financial stability, environmental, and we set strategic objectives around what's really important to the important expectations of our interested parties. Then we identify the KPIs around these strategic objectives. If we stop there, so folks, one thing I want to tell everyone, everybody's setting KPIs, and these KPIs have no basis. So how do you make sure they have basis? You make sure they align with interested party expectations and the context of the organization. Not only is it a great idea, it's a requirement today. But if you stop there, it's not enough. You have to identify the key processes that drive the result. So the KPIs are the result that top management cares about. And if you go back to ISO 9001 or 14001 or 45001, there's the 4.4F, identifying the processes that impact planning. Folks, that's what you're doing with this model when you identify processes and the process measures that impact the KPIs. And then, Mike, I'll go a little faster here. We conduct the risk-based thinking, and we identify the projects to work on to close the gap. So we talk about each KPI having the where we are and a goal. And that's the gap between where we are and the goal. And that's what we do with the improvement projects, is we close the gap. And that typically is through cross-functional teams and project teams working under the champion of the organization, who's part of a cross-functional top management team. These are all the things we try to sort of implement as a part of the business operating system. I could go on.
No, that's because I want to keep our powder dry, because as I mentioned in the intro, we're doing a webinar together with you next week titled Risk-Based Thinking and Planning Using the Business Operating System Approach, and that's going to happen on Tuesday, June 20th. You can see it right there, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. It's going to be hosted by Dirk Ducharme, as usual, and Chad, you're going to present it. You can register via link in Chad's article below the video player screen, or just keep an eye on your email inbox for further details.
Couple of things for the audience. Come after reading the paper.
Right.
Because what we're going to do is show you an implementation and show you in a step-by-step manner where you might actually forget some of the key, sort of little things I'm talking about in terms of what it's all about. All right. So see you all next week, and thank you very much, Mike. Thank you, everyone.
Chad, thank you as always for a lot of information. And again, if all of you out there listening appreciate that, check out the webinar. You're going to get a lot of great information from Chad. He always gives a great presentation. So Chad, thanks again for joining us. We'll see you on Tuesday.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you. All right. Well, one of the most important parts of being a successful manager is understanding psychology and cultural clues. I mean, if you want to be a superstar leader in any field, you simply must be able to develop people to reach their utmost potential. It's good for them. It's great for the organization. It's just good overall. Our next guest has, I think, a rare proficiency, I can say, in this art and science. He's Kelly Graves, longtime Quality Digest contributor and first-time author of the new book, The Management and Employee Development Review. You can see it right there, which I proudly reviewed and highly recommend. So, Kelly Graves, welcome back to Quality Digest World Headquarters.
Mike, it's great to be back. It's been too long.
How are you? It has been a while. Yeah, we had you. God, it's been almost a year, I think, since you were here on the show.
You know, writing the book took it out of me. I think we talked about that before.
Here it is right here, in case people don't see it.
I took 20 years of experience and put it into that book. So,
yeah.
The articles have kind of taken a back seat to that, but I'm going to get back into the article business as well.
That's great. Well, you know, it's interesting because I read your book during the review process before it was published, and I really got into this. And I've known about the Management and Employee Development Review. You talked about it in Quality Digest articles a lot. It's always very interesting to me that you start with management. It's the Management and Employee Development Review, both, but management comes first. So it really is a 360-degree review process, isn't it, that goes into this? It
really is. You know, you've got to start with the manager simply because when managers and employees get together and there are problems within that relationship, that dynamic with the employee, the manager has to take 30 to 40% of the responsibility for that, because it's their job to teach, to coach, to counsel. And so many managers, even though they've been to classes, they've been to workshops, they still don't know really how to apply it. And that's what I tried to do in this book, is to take examples to where people can say, okay, this is where I have to learn how to apply it. And bringing business and psychology together to where the manager understands the psychology behind the people that they're managing. And that's the real key. People understand their business. They understand the nuts and bolts of their business. They even understand, you know, the logistics of what needs to happen next. What they don't truly understand, and what I run into daily, is how do I get this group of people to do what we as a group need them to do?
Well, that's not, I mean, that wasn't for a long time the way management was. I mean, a lot of people were brought up, I mean, a lot of managers are people that are later in their career, and they may have been brought up in a situation where it's like, well, I got beat on. I mean, I didn't have any input. I was told what to do and I did it. I did it well and I moved up the ranks, and now, darn it, people are gonna listen to me tell them what to do now. So that's the way people know how to do it. So it does require starting with the manager to change his or her own perspective, right?
It really does. One has to take their personality out of it and put on their management hat. There's even times where I have to do that, where I'll be in front of a group and people are saying certain things and it's stabbing me, and I have to remember, okay, they're not stabbing me. I need to put on my consultant hat here and make sure that I'm responding in a psychological manner, not as a Kelly Graves response, but as the consultant response.
When you're saying stabbed, I mean you're getting triggered.
They're hitting my nerves.
And so you have to, but you're trained, so you know how to do this. But a manager who maybe isn't trained and will get that, you know, kind of whether it's passive aggressive or an outright, you know, mutiny in the company, whatever it may be, will respond generally aggressively to that. But that only perpetuates that cycle, right?
It does. It perpetuates it, and that's why the book starts with why managers use fear and anger to manage, and how ineffective that is, and really not ineffective, but how disastrous that is, and how long-standing those that pain that the employees feel sticks around.
Yeah, and it's not, I mean, it doesn't really do anybody any good. I mean, you know, we don't check our personality at the door when we come to work. We are all people wherever we are. So I mean, when you're wounded as a manager or an employee, you know, not only is it going to hurt you, but it's going to hurt the organization, because you're not going to get the best person. I mean, the best person who's invested in themselves and is confident and happy is going to do the best work. I mean, it seems pretty simple. But I mean, still, again, there's this idea that, you know, you said you beat a man in the morning and he'll do better work all day long, right? That philosophy is out there. It really is still out there in a lot of places.
Yeah, it is. And like you said before, it has come from the 20s and the 30s and the 50s, where I'm the boss, do what I say. But now we're in an information age where even people on the shop floor that are running machines are running computerized machines, and they're highly technical. Think about, you know, an average auto mechanic. He or she is a highly skilled technician. And it takes a lot of experience to get that, and so we really do need to collaborate with the employee. And that's where managers need to learn a new style of management. And it's not enough to read a book, it's not enough to go to a workshop, it's not enough to go to a conference. It's something that you really have to be coached and taught side by side. In fact, one of my clients said this quote, and I told him I was going to use it in the book. I don't know if I put it in there, if it was edited out or not, but I keep reading the books, but my employees don't change.
Right.
And I thought, God, that is just so genius, because there are so many people that they read the books, they go to the workshops, but if their behavior and the actions don't change, then the organization doesn't change.
Right.
And that's the hardest thing for a manager to do, is to change his or her behaviors and actions. And like you said earlier, we don't park our personality at the door. I mean, we are who we are at work, but we do need to put on our work hat when we come to work, and we need to start thinking smarter. And this is what I hope the book introduces: is there's business and there's psychology, and the basis of business is not your research and development, it's not your buildings, it's not your cash flow, it's really your people. And when you come to managing and leading people, you really do need to understand what is going to motivate them.
And I'm glad you said that, because I wanted to get to that, because your next column, little sneak preview here for you folks out there, your next column is going to be talking about employee motivation. And you say something frequently, which I think is really valuable, is I can't motivate you and you can't motivate me. I mean, we're all free agents in this world. But again, there's this idea that managers are supposed to motivate their employees. You're supposed to be the one responsible for making sure that person does their job. So, in your column to come, you're talking about the various systems people use, cash rewards or trips or parties or whatever, and how none of those things really work. So what's a better way of motivating employees or helping people learn to motivate themselves?
It's really the most simple way is to ask the employee. We need to have more conversations with the employee. What motivates you? And what I talk about in the book is intrinsic motivation. And intrinsic motivation is motivation that the person does it because they want to do it, because of pride and because of workmanship and craftsmanship. And that's what the manager needs to tap into. It's not about pizza parties, and it's not about bowling alley things. Those don't really motivate people. In fact, even money doesn't motivate. It motivates for a very short time, and then all you are is a poor company with a person that's getting paid more, that expects more, next time that you want them to do more work. So really, the most simple way of doing it is to ask the employee, you know what, we're in this together. It's really a partnership. The manager and employee relationship is a partnership. What do you need to motivate you? What is going to help you and I work better together to get this project done or to get this task done? And have a conversation. And at first, the employee might not even have an answer for you, because they've never been posed with that. And especially by a manager who they're used to just taking orders from. And so have that dialogue and explore it with the employee. When you do that, you start developing a bond and a real teamwork. We have a lot of groups that work together. They call themselves teams, but they're not teams. They're just groups that happen to work in the same vicinity. But when you start having a dialogue, what that prompts is it really prompts a true teamwork. It's you and I working together. And it's
a review. So employees have this idea of a review, which we've all gone through for many years in our career, where it's like, you march into the office and the boss tells you, here's what you did, here's what you did good, maybe, here's what you did bad, next year we'll see and we'll do it again. And it's worthless. I mean, actually many companies are not even doing reviews anymore because of the lack of value. But this is, as you say, and it's a perfect word, it's a conversation, and it's an ongoing conversation, right? It doesn't just happen once a year, it could happen every day, it could happen once a month. I mean, it doesn't really matter what the frequency necessarily is, but it's ongoing. That's really the key point, I think.
It really is the key point. And evaluations research has showed that they actually make the relationship worse. The manager doesn't know how or doesn't like to do them. The employee, it's usually a one-sided conversation. It takes time. And again, we have to go back to, it's a review. When we look at the word evaluation, it means to judge. And so if you judge me, I have to defend. And so we're off to the wrong foot right off the bat. And so what we need to do is engage in a conversation. What do we need to do? you know, if I'm your manager, what do I need to do to actually help you do your job better? You know, are there problems in the way that I need to remove? Do you need more coaching? Do you need more training? What is it that you need? And what is it that you need from me? And you know, so that's really how we create the teamwork.
Yeah. It's great stuff. I mean, it's a great book. It's right here again. It's the Management and Employee Development Review right there. CRC Press, I believe, is where it's available everywhere, Amazon and CRC Press as well. I'm glad you're back writing columns for us as well.
Thank you. It's so nice to be back.
It's great. We're going to have Kelly back on the show going forward. Kelly was a regular guest on the show last year, and we're going to have him back now that he's done with the book and it's out. So go check it out. It's a really good book. All right. Well, that's our show for this week. But before we go, of course, we want to thank our sponsor. Mitutoyo Corporation is the world's largest provider of measurement and inspection solutions, offering the most complete selection of machines, sensors, systems, and services, with a line encompassing CMMs, vision form and finish measuring machines, as well as precision tools and instruments, and metrology data management software. Mitutoyo's nationwide network of metrology centers and support operations provides application, calibration, service repair, and educational programs to ensure that their more than 6,000 metrology products will deliver measurement solutions for their customers. For more information, visit mitutoyo.com or click on the banner ad just below or just to the right of this video player page. Well, Kelly Graves, thanks again for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. And again, we look forward to having you
thanks again, Mike.
Upcoming episodes. And thanks again to Chad Kymal of Omnex for joining us. He joined us via Skype. Don't forget that we have a webinar with him and Dirk next week. And you can see it, I think, right there. Risk-based thinking in planning 6.0. That's clause 6.0 in ISO 9001, using the business operating system approach. And it's going to be, again, June 20th, this upcoming Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And Chad will present, Dirk will host, and you can register in the link in Chad's article, which you can find below this video player screen, or keep an eye on your email inbox for further details coming up next week. Well, that's our show. Thanks again, all of you, for joining us. We'll see you next week here on Quality Digest Live.